I'm great.
Hey everyone, love to see some familiar faces there. People who've been coming to a number of these webinars, but hopefully some new people as well. You know, I'll just sort of ramp in pretty easy as a couple more people will log in just after 2 o'clock. But you know, very quickly, welcome. My name's Craig Davis, run the growth programs at the Canberra Innovation Network, and this webinar is part of a series that we call the Weekly Innovation Challenge. That we've sort of spun up to help you in this lockdown world. There's less interaction, there's less feeling of, you know, come together, people together. That's really important. We want everyone to feel supported. We want you to support each other, and let's do it by actually learning and flexing our muscles, going to the gym and really strengthening our skills in lots of really important areas that can be very powerful for innovative business, which is what we're sort of all about. Today, our theme is a really cool, interesting, and important theme, which is team. When you're building something new, when you're doing something amazing, it pretty much never happens without a team. The team might start just you, but often it brings out to other people, and the more people you can get in your team, and I'm sort of thinking beyond the strict definition of a team, which is my employees or my subcontractors, but all the other people who are supporting in different ways, whether they be mentors, investors, just people who think it's cool, volunteers, you name it. So there's a broad alignment of team. There's people. When you get people behind a project, it's one of the most important signals of success or factors of success. That's really broad picture of a team. Teams for me, the people, is so important. I'm not going to tell you too much about this theme of getting the most from your team, because what we're going to do is we've got a fabulous guest today, Renee Beerworth. Renee is the founder of a consultancy or a small business advisory service called Spinach Ventures. She's got a long history and experience in various HR matters, and we're going to hear from her and hopefully have lots of opportunity for all of you to ask questions and create a conversation that's around subjects that are interesting to you. So without further ado, I've got through that real quick. Renee, what would you like to tell us about yourself?
Well, thanks so much for the introduction and to be invited along today. I am looking forward to the questions and the discussion, and I know that there's going to be plenty that I will learn as well as part of this. I guess to give a bit more context in terms of how I arrived at starting Spinach, after a career sort of internally looking at people and culture in some big organisations in different places around the world, really fascinated by different cultures and the different ways people come together to work on projects that mean something for them. I decided that working within some big professional services, that was hearing a lot of questions coming out of small to medium businesses that didn't necessarily have, you know, someone on their external team or internal team who was really focused and dedicated on people and culture. And so started looking at how we could, you know, bring these different skills and services into some really amazing smaller businesses where it didn't necessarily make sense for them to have, you know, that in-house expertise to the level that some big corporates do. I really care about creating environments where people feel like they belong, and that they belong because people understand who they are and they add value, and that they belong because of their uniqueness. So I guess today I'm really keen to explore a little bit more with all of you around, you know, how we get the most out of our people is really the first really important part is by understanding them better. So, you know, it's like any type of relationship, really understanding what, you know, what's important to people, what do they value, what drives them, what do they care about. You start to make connections on that human level, then I think, you know, we can achieve so much more together. We can solve problems that we never thought we'd be able to solve, and you know, we can have a whole lot of fun while we do that as well. So that's really where I'd love to, you know, explore a little bit more with each of you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Renee. I probably should have mentioned that Renee provides some services to us at the Cambrian Innovation Network, which we're extremely happy with. So just so you're aware of that relationship. Look, Renee, you started off with understanding people's motivation, where they've, understand their world, which I think is the cornerstone of working effectively with people. What are a couple of concrete tips that people can actually do to try and to make that happen?
Sure. So I think, you know, probably depends on where we're starting. If we're starting with the people that we've got within our teams already, you know, we know what we have employed them to do. So there must have been some sort of assessment around their expertise or skills or experience, perhaps the way that they work, their style, their behaviour, personality, and we bring them in and we have some expectations around what they'll deliver. I think when we do that at the beginning of the employment relationship, things do change. So it's really important over time to make sure we're connecting with people on a regular basis to understand where they're at. You know, what motivated them to join us might be different once they've been working with us for 12 months, 2 years, 3 years. So making sure we keep those conversations going. It is a relationship. So understanding, you know, what people really care about, what they value. And I guess I'm not talking about salary or, you know, while that might be part of it, it's, you know, what are the things that really excite them and make them want to, you know, do more than just take home that paycheck. You know, it might be looking at things like paying attention to engagement. So engagement is, you know, direct output from employee experience. So, you know, what's the day in the life, a week in the life, month in the life of that particular person within your team? Trying to align those expectations with what people are good at doing, are interested in doing, and excited to do.
Yeah, and it can be just as simple as finding a little bit of time with someone and saying, what are you excited about at the moment, or what's big in, you know, just open up that conversation outside the normal day-to-day work. Yes,
yeah. Look, you know, that personal human connection is so important to really get to know people better and understand them. I think, you know, inviting people to collaborate with you too. So, you know, when you're working on things together and trying to solve something together, you understand a little bit more about the way people approach a problem, or the types of questions that they want to ask, or different, you know, the starting point or the lens that they're looking through. So being able to collaborate is a really important part of engaging with people. You know, and encourage creative thinking with people as well. So making it okay to make mistakes and learn from them is a really important part of that process of engagement as well. So different factors around that become really important. You've got to make it an environment where people feel safe to make a mistake, or they feel safe to challenge or ask a question. And, you know, those sorts of factors are important as well.
Totally. And I guess that's easier said than done. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of techniques that people can use. And I think you'd be saying, so watch out for when it's not happening as well. Or it's all about that understanding, that listening piece.
Yes.
How we were just talking before we kicked off the webinar about, you know, part of the things we should probably talk a bit about is how that's different in this new way of working. And it's a bit shaped by the lockdown and probably post-lockdown. You know, there's, you know, people are doing things differently. What do you think is sort of really, you know, things that we should be paying attention to there?
Yeah, I think the notion of the way we think work should be structured or done is, you know, we've really got to get past that now. We need to be able to appreciate that flexible working doesn't just look like part-time, so someone can go and drop their kids off to school and then work for from 9 till 3. It's understanding what people care about, the different things that are important for them to do, and realize that work is a piece of that. I think shift right at the moment, people are really thinking a whole lot more about what's important to them as a whole of life thing, not just as a work, what am I going to do for my career? So being able to understand that and what people care about, and know how to shape the work and what the contract is between the individual and the employer as well. We have so many different options in terms of the way we can engage with people, whether it is employment arrangement or other, and how that employment arrangement is structured. So, I think the trick there is really understanding the scope of the work, what it is that you're trying to achieve, but really being able to break down that scope of work and think about how it might be structured for people, depending on, what they're good at, what they want to do, what they're available to do, the amount of time they have, or where they want to work from. So you end up being able to do a bit of crafting, I think, around, you can have a job and a description, which can be fairly static if you don't keep thinking about how that's changing. But once you then add a person into the mix, you need to start thinking about how can I mold this around this individual? So to think a little bit more creatively about how we engage.
Yeah, totally.
Does that answer your question?
No, yes, I thought you made a couple of points that I was really interested in. And I think it gels with some conversations that happened last week at the Future Skills discussion, where some of the business people were seeing that sort of flexibility and ability to shape collaboratively with their team, how best to achieve goals. Was a real competitive advantage for them. And it seems to me that's a bit of an emerging trend, and it sounded like you've been seeing that in your practice as well.
Yeah, definitely. So being able to not think of a role with a job title as the same as a role with the same job title in a different organisation, and being able to work through what success looks like within your own organisation helps you to understand, why the fit of someone might be better, in one organisation compared to a different organisation. But I think it helps people align to what they care about as well. So not just being known as a software engineer or a business development manager, but being able to apply those skills in an organisation that matches what they're interested in and what they're motivated by.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's very exciting when you see that matchup happen, and right people, right tasks, right skill sets, right. And for me, big goals, where you're headed together. If there's that big, we're heading together and it all comes together, and it just feels amazing when that happens. So that's one of the signs of a high performing team for me.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest sort of tip around that is really thinking that big picture about purpose. Why do you exist, and how do you connect with your people in terms of, that being something they care about, but being really clear on your values, and how you operationalize them. So what are the behaviors that demonstrate your values? And I think if you can get the value alignment with your people, then whatever skills or experience they bring, there'll always be something that they can add to your organization. So, if you're continuing to change, the people who have that value alignment with you, they're not, I guess it's, there's opportunity there to be flexible, to move around the organization, and to fill different sort of functions and do different activities, you know, as you grow, as you change. I think we tend to find issues that pop up they're more likely to pop up when we have this misalignment of values. So I think in growing organizations, in smaller organizations as they get bigger, knowing that whatever they recruit someone for today might be different to what they need them to do in 6 months or 12 months, or they might need them to wear multiple hats. Obviously the conversations can continue to develop, and you can, you know, look at the motivational changes and how engagement changes and keep moving with each other. But a really critical part of that is being able to understand and select people that are aligned to your values. Yeah, so values alignment. And I think that leads quite nicely into Liz's question. Or Liz, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself? Hi, Liz.
Hello, lovely to see you.
You too.
My question is, as the business grows, many business owners struggle to know their team. They're used to having this intimate relationship, and you sort of started with knowing your team because of the time it takes to know if you've gone from 5 to 10 or 30 people. Any tips on that transition from small to sort of next level business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Liz. It's a really good question, because I think we find a really big challenge in that growth phase from sort of starts at high teens, 20 employees to 30. That's where I tend to see a really big shift. And it is very much around the amount of time you have directly one-on-one with people. When you start small, you know, you're in each other's pockets, you know a whole lot more about each other, and you do get to know each other really well. As an organisation grows, it's just not possible to maintain that level of interaction that you might have had at the beginning. And so looking at, and I think this is where, you know, you start to look at it as an organisation gets a little bit bigger, it starts to make sense to have a little bit of structure around some of the ways that you come together as a team, some of the ways that you define what success looks like. That structure then alleviates some of the, I guess, the common questions or the common, you know, ways of interacting or processes that you might have as a team, so that you can then dedicate a whole lot more time on that human one-on-one interaction for the appropriate person. You might bring people into the team that help you start to manage or engage with people on a more of a supervisory level. So what's really important there is back to the values. That's sort of the biggest tip for me, is that if you're bringing people in to help you work with your team or help engage with your team, they need to be really aligned in terms of the value set of what you care about, so that when they're making decisions that aren't black or white, which often the people decisions, you know, often fall in the grey, that they're making them in a way that aligns to the way the organisation is set up for success. But yeah, certainly looking at some of the things that might make managing a team a little bit easier. You might start to document some of the expectations in terms of what success looks like for individuals in the roles that they're performing. Very much making sure that you're starting to make clear what behaviour is okay and not okay. Behaviour is something that very quickly changes the more people you bring in, and if you're not planned about that, can grow into something that might work, but it might not work. So I think being a little bit strategic about the way that you think about values and behaviour can set an organisation up really well as it grows.
Happy with that, Liz? Look, I think that's a nice link into Serena's question. Do you want to ask your question about values, Serena?
Thank you, which is I'm noticing a huge trend, particularly in the Commonwealth Public Service, but I'm sure it's broader, about a focus on outcomes. You know, a new leader or new minister will come in and say, we're all about outcomes. What does that mean then in terms of values? Is a totally outcomes focused approach good because it's measurable, or is it a problem?
So in a people sense, Serena, I think one of the outcomes, I suppose, is our behaviour in the way we interact within a team. And, you know, if I think about values, the way that we talk about, there's a difference, I suppose, being able to have a values set that lives up on the wall. But if we don't know how to bring that to life, and then it literally can be words on a wall that just stay on a wall. So if we mean outcomes focused in, you know, what is it that we can see and what can we observe, what can we notice in terms of what's being done, then I think, you know, I think being able to actually describe values in terms of their behaviours is a really important frame to have. Does that answer your question, or if I'm sort of missed the angle that you were after there?
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Look, and I think, Renee, that slightly leads for me into a phrase you used a little earlier, which was about operationalising values. And I'm really interested to explore what are things that we can do that put our values into operation, into effect. And if I can just slightly editorialise on the last piece, if you achieve your outcomes by going outside your values, you haven't achieved your outcomes. And that's a constraint that you've got to stick to. And if people are emphasising too much outcomes, my own opinion is got to be careful there. You know, we are all about outcomes, innovators. We're trying to make the world a better place and all of that sort of thing, but you can't do it by going outside your values. And if we agree about that, how do we operationalize those values? How do we make sure that it actually happens and there's not just 8 dot points on the wall and everyone says, isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think our values can be seen in the way we behave, the way we make decisions, the way we interact with each other. So being able to describe in terms of behaviour of what a value looks like gives us that those you know, that guiding framework, I suppose, to know what behaviour is okay and what behaviour is not okay. So you know, I guess we've got to be able to describe in terms of what we can see. There's no point having a value on the wall that says innovation. What does innovation look like within that organisation? What does that actually mean? What behaviour is okay and not okay? Is, you know, so that's, I suppose, when I mean operationalise, it's really talking about being able to see a behaviour and name it, describe it, and know that is that is okay. That's a you know, related to the value that we want to see within the way that we work. I did have another, just you made me sort of think too about, you know, where the way we interact with each other. I've worked with lots of different organisations over my time, and I think the organisations that put people at, I'm a little bit biased because this is my area of enjoyment and passion for my work, but when we put people at the centre, lots of those other outcomes will come. If we can align our behaviour that you know, creates the culture that we know will facilitate the purpose of our business, then we're giving people a framework in which to operate. And if we can support them to be, you know, the best version of themselves within that, you know, framework of what is okay and what's not okay behaviour wise, all of those other business outcomes will come. So yeah, look, operationalising them is really about just being able to see them, name them, describe them.
And even see when it goes wrong, how we deal with that with a little bit of visibility so that people know what not to do.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Our values can get watered down if we see behaviour that doesn't fit, but we don't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's essential. And I think that also comes back to Liz's question. As the team grows, you have to be much more intentional about that, because of, you know, when there's only 2 of us, we sort of know our values.
Yeah. Look, and I've had to make, with some business leaders, we've had to make some really difficult decisions about people when they have displayed behaviour that is counter to the values of the organisation. I've got, a few in mind where they might have been great performers in the traditional sense of either bringing in lots of dollars to the organisation or, winning lots of new clients, but ultimately choosing to do things in a way that run against the values of the organisation. If you don't call it at that point, then you're saying that those behaviours of that person are okay, and perhaps the value statements you have up on the wall don't mean anything, and over time potentially can water down the what people perceive you to be like in the market, so not just within your organisation but external too as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Harold, you asked on the chat a really interesting question about high performing teams and engaged teams, and what does this mean? Do you want to explain that?
Well, I was hoping someone could really explain it. I mean, you hear it a lot in books, in business books and leadership books about highly engaged teams, and I don't know if it's a buzzword or what it really, really means. I mean, is it people who believe in something or communicate honestly? I don't know. There's the Disney guy, there's the Westpac guy, they all write these books about highly engaged teams, and I wonder if it's lost its, if it's I don't know, is it a fad or is it something, is it integrity? Anyway, it's just an interesting area. I think in innovation, people are really attracted to the alignment of something, or the vision or the purpose or something, and I think we have a bit of a distorted, in a good way, community here, because people here, because I think they want to be, rather than it's a job. So yeah, I just wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think completely understand, when we're starting up our own business and we're we're just all in with it, and it's something we really care about, we're really passionate about it. That's generally not the founder or the owner that we're trying to engage here. It's the people that they might then bring along for the ride, the people they start employing, and really want to work with them to make that vision come to life. I think, high performing team is a term that's been around for a while, and we see it in all types of teams. And I think, for me, it's, a group of people who understand why they come together in that mix of people. They understand what they're there to achieve as a bigger purpose, and they're able to draw on each other's strengths to be able to create something that if they were standalone, independent, trying to do on their own, they wouldn't be able to achieve. So being able to bring a group of people together to be able to achieve something that's bigger than any one of them could do. And I think, to do that, it does come back to having relationships there, and it's not about everything being fine and, comfortable and, and happy all the time. It's being able to challenge and be able to say you disagree with something, or to identify something that you would do in a different way, but knowing what the boundaries are in terms of behaviour that make that helpful, constructive, forward moving, but also that is respectful and safe. So I think there's, a key part of high performing teams is also creating an environment where people feel safe to bring their expertise, to be able to challenge, ask questions, and know that that everyone's there for the same purpose. So they're doing it for the good of the team, for the organisation, what they're trying to achieve, and they're not punished, I guess, for making a mistake, or asking a question or challenging something that perhaps the leader has said that they need to do, but making it a safe environment that people can actually have robust discussions around what will make things better. So look, I think we know teams that work really well together and achieve some great outcomes. We know teams that don't work well together, and there are lots of different reasons why that might be the case. So I think high performing team is a valid description of a possible state of a team. I think there's lots of factors that go into how to get it to that point.
Thanks.
Lots and lots of factors, and we could really, and how, some more factors or tips or things we can do to make our teams more high performing. I think this would be a really interesting conversation to continue, but keep coming in with new questions. Can I just put one word on team though that I think is worth considering about high performing teams, which is diverse teams, by which I mean teams with different skill sets, different mindsets, and that doesn't mean everyone just always agrees about everything, but there's still that common core, the common purpose, the common values. Renee, that sort of friction, that creative friction, right?
Yep.
It can be so powerful, but it has risks with it. How do you best manage that? How do you make sure it's a good creative tension?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, my first thing is coming back to values. So, if we have a set sort of, I guess, code of behavior that is okay or not okay, but also that we're really connecting and knowing what we care about and what's important to us. And so when we join organizations or decide to stay with organizations, that we know that ultimately we're with other people who care about the same things. Now, we have different styles and different personalities, and that does cause friction and, can cause really uncomfortable situations and conversations sometimes. And they're not always easy. And like any relationship, you've got to work at it. And part of that is then understanding each other, understanding where each other's coming from. And I find the organizations that don't have that shared values framework, when things are smooth and really successful and the business is humming along, it's not so much an issue. But when there's stress, when there's challenge, lockdowns are a good example, that's when that sort of stuff can come out. And I think if we don't feel like others really care about the same thing as us, it's very difficult then to maintain a connection through really difficult times. So it's back to the relationship piece. I think understanding where people are coming from, and being able to be curious and non-judgmental and ask questions. Sometimes it's having someone as a sounding board if you feel like, it's just too heated where you're at, being able to be open and acknowledge how you're feeling, acknowledge that, we all have emotions and they're all valid. And sometimes we just need to be able to be curious and come out of conversation or a difficult situation with the intention that we're all there for the same reason, to see that organisation succeed. Let's understand from each other's perspective and have an open conversation about it.
Look, and I think so that conflict or misalignment or difficult conversation piece is something that we could probably unpack a bit more. But I really want to make sure people from the audience if you've got other questions or comments that you want us to explore, put it out there. I think Duncan actually asked about any cool tools or clever interventions, I guess, that you can use to build culture, gamification, feedback. I don't know. Anything that leaps to mind on that one, Renee?
Yeah, look, I've got one that we love using at the moment, and I love it partly because it's free. So I think that's always a good thing. It's also good in small to medium space. And I've mentioned this, and a couple of you guys I know have used this before as well. But there's a tool called Fingerprint for Success, F4S. Which is a motivational tool. Yes, it's a personality type questionnaire, but it's been developed by people who have come out of the coaching space. So really looking at, what are people's natural motivations? What are the things that really engage them, that are easy? It doesn't, things that light them up. And then what are the things that take energy away? And knowing that can change over time. Motivation is an aspect of our, person that can change over time. So elements of personality can be fairly similar over time, but motivation is something that can be very dependent on our circumstances. What I love about that tool is that you get your results instantly. The platform itself is a coaching platform. So for some people, they like that engagement of being able to look at what are some different things that they can do to enhance the way that they prefer to work. But it also gives you an opportunity to do a team view. So you can invite other people to connect with you. So I'm on there. I'm happy to connect with anyone who wants to connect on there to see how the team view looks. But you can then start to build by overlaying all of those profiles. So I think that's quite a neat tool to be able to use. Both Atlassian and Canva use Fingerprint for Success in growing their teams. So they look at it very much from this job crafting element that I mentioned before. You get people in with the right values, with the skill sets that you need, and then the way that you move people through your organisation over time, you can really tap into motivation to help work out what's going to be a good fit. So that's a neat one, Duncan, that I like to put out there.
And it also might be relevant to Liz's earlier question about as the team grows, tools like this can really be a powerful leverage instead of just the founder trying to spread themselves too thin and try and do all of it yourself. Yeah,
and there are lots of tools out there and people use different things. I think just because I have a psychology background in my training as well, I really like the tools that are quite individual, that don't put you into a box. So I'm not as I don't enjoy the ones that put you in a box so much, but the ones that show that you have different factors that are different continuums. So you can be quite far one end to the left and someone else can be quite far to the right, or you can both be somewhere else along that line, and that there are different elements to it. So it's a bit more complex, but I think a little bit truer to the way people are. So I was going to say something else and I've lost my train of thought, but I'll come back to it.
You think what you wanted to say, and I'll just mention that there's on the chat, there's some interesting conversations, including people mentioning some books that they've found very inspirational or thought-provoking or useful to read, and I love people to throw in other book suggestions. You see behind me, books, I love them. It doesn't have to be a paper one, an ebook. Reading and as an entrepreneur and as an emerging leader of these new companies you're creating, read around and find the principles, the styles, the ideas that resonate with you. Find your own leadership style, but reading widely, or reading and YouTubing, whatever you like to get your information, can really, you can search for some of the things that you find resonate with you, and that matters. Renee, did you think what you were about to say?
I did, thank you. So I guess, any of the tools available, I think the benefit of using something, whatever it is about creating a shared language. So it's the same kind of concept, I guess, for values and describing them in terms of behaviours. It's a shared language you then use within your team, and it helps people to connect to what they might be like compared to what someone else might be like. So it gives us a way of being able to understand each other if we have a shared language.
Yeah, awesome. And sometimes that shared language comes out of a tool like F4S, or out of a particular management philosophy book or something like that. And if we all like it, one of the books we like here at the Canberra Innovation Network is called The Rainforest, because we think innovation cultures are, it's an analogy that we just really like, and it gives us a little bit of a shared language around how do we collaborate with people, how does it work in the rainforest. So yeah, really good. More questions from the audience. Anyone? Sorry, there's so much on the chat I can't see. Yeah, that's Daniel mentioned another book, and some of those books talk about people's personal experiences, and I'm a big believer in learning from really specific examples. what do we learn from every example? There's always a lesson learned. I think
there's something else I can add too, if there's not a question there to go. When we're thinking about how we get the most out of our people, and I've talked earlier about engagement, and that is directly linked to an employee experience. There are, I guess, different factors that contribute to the employee experience. We've talked a bit about culture, we've talked about values, and is it an environment from a culture perspective that, you know, they resonates with them, that they feel like they can, you know, bring their best self. There are other elements that are really important to the engagement piece as well, and the experience piece. And that's around, you know, do people have the right tools or technology to do their job well? So sometimes that can, you know, go missing for whatever reason, but really understanding what people need to do their job well, and identifying things that, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be costly. I know sometimes it can be, but really thinking about what are the different, you know, tools that we use in order to do our work. The other thing is understanding the environment that best facilitates the work that you're doing. So talked about it before in terms of job crafting, and this is another element, I guess, to that job crafting is, you know, what's the setup need to be like in a physical sense? And it's, you know, whether it's people working from home from, you know, a mobile device, or do they ideally, are they doing something where being able to have dual monitors or a bigger screen, or, you know, is that important for them? Is that going to help them feel more productive and less frustrated? I think it's, you know, when you have conversations with people and understand not just what's going well, but what are the things that frustrate you, or, you know, if there was one thing that we could change about the way that you work, what would it be? If there's one thing that would, you know, make you feel less frustrated and more engaged, what would it be? So being able to stop and ask our people questions like that can be really insight, you know, can provide a lot of insight.
Totally. But I'll give you one tip. Only ask questions like that if you're going to take their answers seriously. Because otherwise you'll just annoy people. A couple of really good questions on the chat. I might go to Mark first. Are you able to unmute and ask your question about creating a sense of ownership? Happy to ask it on your behalf if you don't want to.
Oh yeah, I can.
Yeah, there you are.
Sorry. I should put the video on and be sociable. No, yeah, look, just, I mean, my experience, originally being in a business partnership and then becoming a sole trader, I noticed a real difference in sort of how that sense of, you know, ownership of, I guess, the product, but also the overall company sort of affects, I suppose, the power dynamics, but also people's motivations. And I think you sort of answered the question through everything you were saying anyway, but it was just the question about, you know, how do you embody that sense of someone owning their role and those responsibilities in their role in the organisation when they might not be, you know, putting their whole life into it like a business owner might be.
Yeah, no, it's a good reflection, Mark, and I think one that, you know, lots of people are challenged with, and that clear difference between when you're an owner and fully invested in your organisation, and people that are keen and interested to do it, but it's, you know, they're not the ones that have gone out and started their own business. And I think it does come back to being clear on what the expectations are, and then working with the person to understand, you know, what is it that you need to know about them to make them feel like they are able to bring their best self to work. So, you know, what are the conditions that are going to help them to thrive? The tools that they need for their work, the relationships they have with people around them at work, the environment they're in which to work, who the clients are or customers are. So being able to really get to know people and understand, you know, what are the factors that they need to thrive. You know, we know a plant needs water and sunlight and good soil. You know, really thinking about our people in that way too, that they make a choice to work with us. So, you know, what is it that we can do to maintain that relationship?
If I can just add one thing to that, when you think about you want your team to feel that same sense of ownership, I want you to think exactly what you want them to really own, and it won't be necessarily exactly the same as what you feel as the founder or literal owner of the business, if that makes sense. But you know, and you can create people, you know, people can feel really committed to certain outcomes, and that's sort of ownership that you're after. If they care, if they understand the purpose of it, if they, here's a motivation that I find it's probably a little undersold: pride. People take pride in their work, and they're very proud of if they think I can achieve a good outcome in a good way, they're proud of it, and rightly so. And that can be a big motivator. Duncan, you had a number of questions on the chat. Do you want to ask one of them?
I just punched up a couple of books there for people to enjoy. There's a few of them around, obviously, that might help you out, but I think you've asked the one about the tools, which I thought was really good. Let me get back to my notes. Sorry.
Culture.
Sorry.
You had a question about who's responsible for culture.
Oh yeah. So I mean, you know, when you're building your business for the first time, you're so busy worrying about accountants and finance people, but you know, whose responsibility is it to build culture in your business? I don't have a lot of time, and I don't have a lot of money, is what most people say. So, you know, is culture as important as getting the finances and the sales right? I just wondered what your thoughts would be on that, Renee.
Yeah, well, I guess what I would say to you is culture is going to happen anyway, because you're bringing together a group of people. So it's going to happen. People will bring their own values, and those everyone's individual values will come together, and then you'll get the result of that coming together will become your culture. So you can let it just happen. And sometimes it happens by luck, that it supports and improves and, and makes your business work and grow. And sometimes it doesn't happen either. So sometimes we get workplaces where, we have people who they get in there and 5 minutes later they're gone because they just think, oh God, this is not the place for me. So there's something that's not quite gelling in terms of the way those people come together. So I guess what I would put to you is it's going to happen anyway. It's about whether you want to be strategic about the way that you need it to be to support your business. And it's a tricky one because it's not black and white, and there's no easy sort of right answers. So I keep coming back to, but really understanding your values, what's important to you, knowing which of those are really important to integrate with all things people that you do within your business, and then really focusing on those. And I think you've got to focus on sort of one or two, and make sure they're things that are supporting the purpose of your business, and thinking about the way that you integrate those behaviours in every type of interaction you have, from going out and advertising to bring people into your business, how you onboard them within your business, how they engage and connect with the people around them within the business, both within the business but also directly with key stakeholders of the business, customers, clients.
I can tell you a couple of horror stories from my own personal experience. When I took my eye off the culture ball, it did not end well. If you're not leading, somebody else in your organization will, and it might be not the right, might be in not the right way, not the right direction, not the right values. It's really easy to happen, not because people are bad, but because they've got their own picture, and it all makes sense to them, but it's not necessarily, where you want to go. So you just can't forget culture as a leader in a small or a growing business.
I guess if I can add to that, from time to time, people come into your organization that change your culture, not necessarily for the better. Are there any tips that you might give us on how you could control that, or at least have some say in it, because it can be quite disrupting?
So I guess the first part is about how you select people to come into your organisation. what you say about your organization when you go out to market, what other people are saying about you, and getting that alignment between the people that you're bringing in that match what it is that you need in your organization. So that's, I guess, the first part. Then it's around these behaviors that are okay and not okay, calling them out if they're not okay. And I think also being aware that sometimes we don't get the fit right. Again, it's a bit science and a bit art, I think, in terms of predicting performance and predicting the right people to come into your organization. Sometimes we don't get it right. I think the way that you handle working that out with somebody, and then potentially either exit, might be that they end up exiting from the organization, how you handle that will also reflect on the way that your culture has evolved. So the behaviors that people see, not just directly with themselves, the interaction with themselves, but what they observe between their peers and others within the organization is really important. But in terms of keeping it on a path, is just, it is back to the what you really care about, making decisions around the things that you really care about that are really important. So I guess it's really, in terms of the culture piece, it really is about understanding what's important to you in terms of the way you grow a team, the values piece, creating a safe space, so always being respectful of people, and knowing that just because they're not the right fit for you doesn't make them unworthy or doesn't make them lesser of a human being, but perhaps their skills and expertise might be more aligned to a different organisation because of the values and culture in that organisation.
I think that's a really good piece for a startup, a small growing business. As you scale up, you're finding the subset of people who really are energized by your goals, who've got the right attributes, they fit with your values and culture, and that's a refining process, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Look, we're nearly out of time. Any quick last question from anyone? I think we've spoken quite a lot about values and culture, maybe more than formal performance management systems and stuff like that. But Renee, I think that's sort of where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think, it's coming back to really understanding your people, and, it's easier to know what experience they've got, what qualifications they've got, but really knowing who they are as a human being is I think a really important area to focus. And I think if we can establish those connections and make people that people do in their workplace do understand them, that their manager, their organization really knows them as a person, we do tend to get better results, and we can get more out of people because they feel heard, they feel valued, they feel seen.
Yeah, awesome. Look, so just as people think, if there's one last quick question, one of the things we call this the weekly innovation challenge, is because each week we want to challenge you to do something. So I want you to all of you reflect, what's something I can take away from this conversation to strengthen the culture, to energize my team, to listen or learn more about what my team is motivated by, what's their their human the humanity that they're bringing to this. So so that's my challenge to everyone. Can you go away and think of something? Go back to your team and imagine Renee sitting next to you and she's saying some of these things. What would she see? Should you get somebody external in to have a bit of a look? What are those insights that make you think, you know what, I need to pay a bit more attention to this or this? So that's what I want everyone to do. Renee, so many great insightful comments in that. I was trying to take notes and I got a few in, and I got some amazing little job crafting was a phrase that I'd not heard before, and it speaks to me because I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, and all those culture pieces, and really listening, understanding motivation. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to put in?
Look, I think probably just to know that it's hard, you know, it's
really good
so
point.
rewarding, but and it changes all the time too. So I think, you know, it's something to pay attention to, but you know, we all struggle with it in different ways. So being able to have some support around that can be helpful, and talk things through with other people, you know, that you trust, is really important as well. But look, it's I don't have all the answers. I think every organisation is different, and something that we continue to work at.
Yeah, excellent. No, look, I think that's a great point to end on. Getting the most from your team is not easy. And if you expect it to be easy, you're not going to do it. So, you know, just as founders, as leaders, understand it is going to be hard, and then you can try and bring in great tools, great insights, books, that sort of stuff. Thank you very much again, Renee. It's just short of 3 p.m, so I think we can wrap up. Thank you everyone for the great questions. Really good questions, actually. I think that got right into some pretty deep stuff around the people in our teams and how we get the most out of them in order to achieve our big goals of changing the world and making it a better place through innovative business. Just to remind you again, I organised a really great weekly innovation challenge for next Monday, and then of course realised it's a public holiday. So it'll be the Monday after, and we'll update the website, and it'll all be good. We've got some really amazing guests coming up who'll be really cool to hear from. And yes, Irene, I was about to mention, but thanks for the reminder anyway. Next week, we have First Wednesday Connect, where you'll be able to join this community and hopefully a bit bigger and have some small group conversations, catch up with each other, support each other, share challenges, talk about a team or a culture issue, see what other people think, get some support. It's not just you. You don't have to be Robinson Crusoe all on your own. So please do come along for that. Thanks again, Renee. Awesome. Love working with you. And I'll see you all Monday week or at First Wednesday Connect next week.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Renee.